Alright everyone, so today's video is going to be looking at the RCP polling aggregates as of currently, which is April 18th, 2020, and looking at how these given battleground states will go if the election were held today, based on the polling aggregate. So we're just going to pretend that the polling aggregate was the actual result of the election. So we're going to start from left to right. I've filled out the safe and likely states and also states that don't have a lot of polling. There's hardly any polling from Minnesota, despite the fact that it could get fairly close there. Colorado, not a lot of polling either. We're going to put likely just for the sake of this video. And I guess we'll fill in Nebraska's second as lean or something like that. But we're going to be looking at the rest of these toss-up states and basically inputting the results based on the RCP average. So again, this is very unscientific, and this is not the results I expect to see on Election Day, but I thought it would be a fun thing to put together since there's not really much going on in the world of politics at the moment due to the whole pandemic. So we're going to start left to right here. We're going to start with the state of Nevada. The RCP polling aggregate has Biden up by 4 points in Nevada, so that's safe to put in the lean column for Biden. Again, this is not what I actually expect to see, but I just thought it would be interesting to look at. So now we're going to go to the state of Arizona. Surprisingly enough, Arizona, for some reason, based on the RCP polling, is almost 4.5 points in favor of Biden. Now, these election results are almost a complete reversal of what 2016's were. Hillary got around 44%, Trump got around 48%. So it is kind of interesting, but I think these two polls in particular, where Biden's up by 9 and 8 points, are kind of outliers. Now, it was just a month ago that Trump was actually ahead in Arizona by around 0.2 or 0.3% here on RCP, but they've actually changed it. So RCP is putting Arizona bluer than Nevada. Now, I personally think that's a little ridiculous, but again, for the sake of the video. So the next state we're going to be looking at is the state of Texas. Now, Texas has often been touted as a battleground in 2020. Apparently, RCP thinks it's worthy of doing some polling there. And based on these averages, Trump has 2.6% point advantage over Joe Biden. I think in a worst-case scenario for Trump, he'll win the state by around 5 points. But anyway, we're going to give that as a lean. That's almost tilt, but it's still technically a lean Donald Trump. So currently now, Trump has 188 to Joe Biden's 224 electoral votes. The next state we're going to look at is Wisconsin. These are kind of out of order. I tried to do the tabs from west to east, but we're just going to do this and we'll fill in the other ones, I guess. So the state of Wisconsin for Joe Biden is a 2.7 point advantage. Again, I think that is kind of interesting. And also keep in mind, Hillary Clinton was up in some Wisconsin polls days before Election Day, either anywhere from 8 to 6 points, and the state swung to Trump by 0.7%. As in, he won it by 0.7%. It swung by around 7 points. So, just based on this alone, we'll give the state to Biden by a lean margin. Again, this is strictly based on polls. It never predict elections based on polls, if you actually want to be accurate. Alright, the next state we're going to look at is Michigan. Biden only up ahead by 4.4 points. In actuality, this is actually really bad for Biden because normally polls in the Rust Belt tend to over-represent Democrats, or at least the numbers do. It doesn't have to be the people polled. But essentially, Clinton had decent-sized single-digit leads against Trump in states like Michigan, Wisconsin. Pennsylvania was a lot closer, but definitely in those two states, she had a very decent lead. So actually, this is pretty bad news for Biden because this is around where Hillary was, I think, in April of 2020. She might have actually been a little bit up. But again, since we're basing this very strictly off the polls, this would be lean Biden as well. That puts Biden at 250. Trump does not gain any. The next state we're going to look at is Pennsylvania. Now, Pennsylvania also has Biden winning by 3.8 points. Again, that's actually really bad for Biden because in a national election, the Democrats should be doing a lot better in a state like Pennsylvania. But again, in 2020, Pennsylvania is probably going to be just as close as it was in 2016, whichever way it ends up going, whether it flips to Biden or it stays in Trump's column. But, based on these poll numbers, will give it as a lean Biden. And that gives Biden exactly 270 electoral votes. Based on the RCP polling right now, he would be president of the United States, although that's debatable how much he would actually be governing and how much his surrogates and his VP and his staff would, because he doesn't really seem to be in the proper mental state. So then we're going to take a look at New Hampshire. The New Hampshire polls kind of seem to be all over the place, and I don't know why this stuff keeps refreshing, but they seem to be all over the place because some polls have Biden up heavily and other polls have him up by around 4, and then one poll has Trump winning. So in the general, this is actually super unreliable, but again, for the sake of the video, this would give Trump New Hampshire by a lean margin. Again, lean margins anywhere from 2 to 7 on my scale, which is kind of like a big window, but I think it makes sense because it is sort of a lean, and then likely is 7 to 15. Okay, so that leaves Virginia. Now, Virginia, this was kind of obvious that Biden was going to be pulling ahead. Although, interestingly enough, back in December, Biden was only up by 4 points. And in fact, this was around the same time where they pulled the other Democratic candidates like Bernie Sanders, Pete Buttigieg, and Warren. And Trump was actually beating all of them by about a point or so. But, of course, this isn't actually that accurate. Again, it'll probably be more like 7 points, so in this sense this aggregate's probably more correct. So this gives the state of Virginia to Joe Biden by 7.4 points. North Carolina is next. If we go to North Carolina, Trump will win North Carolina based on these results by 1.3 points, so that would go to Donald Trump in the tilt column. Now, I've still been debating to myself with all the current events if Trump will gain more in North Carolina or he'll lose more. I think both candidates will gain more because I think the third party vote will be less of a factor. So the last time around, Hillary Clinton got around 46% of the vote and Trump got around 49. He almost got to 50. So I think this time around, Biden will probably get 47. Trump will either get 50 or he might get up to 51. But I mean, again, I'm not basing it off these poll numbers. These are my actual predictions. But I think the state of North Carolina will probably be within 3 points. So the next battleground we're going to be looking at is Georgia. I knew it would be there somewhere. So the RCP average is very favorable to Trump here in Georgia. He's winning by 7.5 points. So that's actually a likely margin. So for some reason, the polls have Georgia more red than Texas, which I think is kind of interesting. But again, these are just the polls. And again, we're so far away from Election Day that I think eventually the numbers are going to start getting more accurate as we get closer. I think Texas is going to get redder. I think Arizona is going to get redder. I think maybe states like Minnesota might get bluer. I think Maine might get bluer. But, that all remains to be seen. Oh, by the way, speaking of Maine, there's not really any good polling out of Maine, but some of the polls I've seen have Biden up by a likely margin in Maine at large. So we'll give him that, and then that would put District 2 at around a lean. So this would be a very bad scenario for Donald Trump, but it's not, I guess, the worst scenario he could be in. But this is still pretty bad. But this is how RCP currently rates the race right now in the crucial states. So finally, we're going to stop in the last state of Florida, which has Biden winning by 0.4%. So we'll give the state of Florida to Joe Biden, which puts him at 318 electoral votes to Trump's 220. Now, this result in particular is very interesting because it is so razor thin in the state of Florida that it's really anyone's call. But again, we're just going to be acting like these are the final results on Election Day. And the states that I highlighted previously are either safe states or states that have horrible polling. So I fill in what the polls say about those states at the time. So that's going to be it for this video. I'll probably make a more accurate prediction of way I think the race is going to go. RCP aside, because RCP obviously is not very accurate. Although if Biden were to win the presidency, this map could not be that far off. But I would definitely put Florida in the tilt red column, and I would probably put Texas as likely red, and I'd put Arizona as probably tilt red. So it would basically be the 2016 map, but Biden takes back the Rust Belt. That's what I would see in a likely Biden scenario if he would actually win in November. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching this video. Let me know down in the comments if you'd like to see more videos like this, more like these hypothetical kind of out there videos. Please subscribe to the channel, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.